This is the gospel of Jesus Christ according to St. John, the 10th chapter. Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because the hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down from my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. So I am going to start a little differently than I usually do, with a memory. It's not a very detailed memory, but I do have a memory of a conversation between my boss and one of his subcontractors I overheard during a lunch when I was a young carpenter. One of them was telling the other that no employee will ever care about getting the job done the way they did as the owners. At the time, I took some offense to that. I liked to take pride in the quality of work I did. I cared if the job got done on time, and I honestly cared how I presented myself to the property owner. I cared a lot, and it sounded to me like they were saying that as an employee I didn't, and that irked me, until I started getting some work of my own. Only then did I realize they weren't saying employees don't care. Any hired hand or helper worth their salt cares a good bit. But there is a level of concern you don't even realize exists until it's your job, until it's your responsibility to the property owner, and until it's you that people will be thinking of whenever they drive past the building or the home as the one who built it. I realized that as a hired hand, I cared a lot about being a good employee. I cared about getting my job done well. But I didn't care about the job, not like the owner. And that's what Jesus is saying about his relationship to the sheep, to us. That there's another level of care that we didn't even know was there, that Jesus has because we belong to him. But let's be clear. We are not only the sheep in this metaphor, as much as we would like to read it that way. We like to point our accusational finger at the Pharisees and Sadducees and scribes, as if they are the hired hands that let down the sheep. And there is a sliver of truth to that reading, to the responsibility they were given that they failed. And any of us who wear this stole should take that interpretation of this reading pretty serious. But for all of us, our baptismal identities don't just promise us the inheritance of a kingdom. They raise us up, bind us in service and duty of care. We are all, through the waters of baptism, hired hands in God's mission. And from that perspective, it can be easy to take the same offense to Jesus' words that I did to my boss all those years ago. Of course we care about the sheep, right? I mean, we're not heartless monsters. No one likes to see anyone suffering. And most of the people I know are willing to put in some work to alleviate it if they come across suffering. The congregations I serve have never hesitated to step up and offer personal support or even financial support when there was suffering in our community. So what does Jesus mean we don't care about the sheep? I don't think Jesus meant to insult us any more than that boss of mine meant to call me a bad employee. This is more a statement of fact than judgment. There is a level of concern we don't experience because the sheep don't belong to us. There's a level beyond the care we have. No matter how hard we try, it just isn't there. And I think in some sense we know that there are certain things we have a connection to beyond others. I mean, if it's not your child or your sibling doubting the validity of their own existence and the dignity that they have as a child of God, then discussions about gender, they seem more cultural and political than the immediate care for a sheep in crisis that they are. The plight of veterans seems like a good thing to support in theory, but there's another level when it's your spouse or your child struggling and thinking about pointing the gun in a different direction. Affordable health care is a buzzword until you're the one being turned away from the hospital, and discussions about racial justice and policing take on a very different meaning when you're the one kissing a young black or brown boy goodbye in the morning before they go walking to school. Our compassion, even for causes we want to support, it's capable of being fatigued. We're not able to lay down our life every time for everyone. That's not necessarily wrong. It's a fact of being a finite person. But we do need to realize the emotional distance we place between ourselves and the causes that don't feel like they belong to us is a survival mechanism. It's running from the wolves. It's about our own limitations and not about the dignity of the sheep that Jesus sees. To these, the poor, the ill, the marginalized, the non-normative, they all belong to Jesus, the Good Shepherd. He laid down his life for them and for folds of what we don't even yet know. But there's too much broken in this world for us to be capable of having a passionate and personal response to every need. Some of them feel like they're our own, even if we don't yet understand the care of the shepherd. But others don't. As hired hands, though, our duty calls us to, at the very least, be supportive of those that don't feel like our own. Because they are the Lord's own. See, we will inevitably, even when it feels like our own, fall short of the Good Shepherd's level of care. But that doesn't mean we need to open the door to the wolves when we don't think they belong to us. We definitely don't want to become the wolves ourselves. So let's get back to that carpenter analogy. See, as a carpenter, the quality of plumbing in the buildings we did had absolutely nothing to do with how I felt about having a job done well. It was no reflection upon me. I really could have cared. But my boss was the general contractor. He had oversight over everything that was done. And so part of my job as a carpenter was often getting out of the way and making room for the plumber. Sometimes I even had to help the plumber get their job done. See, much of God's mission will not feel immediately like it's our job or our calling, but our baptismal identity requires us to make room and support those for whom that is the central aspect of their Christian vocation. We are called also to offer help sometimes when we're able to, because God's mission is the care and love of all people. The Good Shepherd cares for all the sheep, even the ones we don't think are deserving of it. We are just hired hands in that mission, and it would serve us well to keep straight who's calling the shots on what happens to the sheep. Of course, in this broken world, the wolves will come. They will. And when fear grips us as we see those wolves in whatever form they take, when it feels like our very lives are on the line and we find ourselves running, leaving the fold behind. At that moment when we feel at our lowest, look down. Look down at yourselves. You won't see the flowing robes of a Pharisee or the hands of a failed hired hand. At that moment, when it seems like the world has come to conquer you, you will see the wool on your sides and hear the bleating of your own cry. Despite all of our failures as hired hands, know this: the Good Shepherd has come for your care as well. He laid down his life for you as well. He loves you beyond what you even thought was possible as well. In this Easter season, we remember that he didn't just lay down his life, he picked it up again. He rose again to demonstrate for us that the wolves have no actual power. There is nothing to fear. We are free to be hired hands without fear, free to be sheep who go back to the fold, sheep free to join together even with those other sheep we let down, and know that we are all one fold. We all have one good and loving shepherd to whom we belong and cares for us beyond our understanding. Alleluia. He is still risen.